All right, welcome back to the program. As you can see that I have the Executive Vice Chairman and the Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the FCCPC, which was formerly the CPC, the Consumer Protection Council. Good morning and welcome to you, sir.
Good morning, thank you.
How are you doing? It's been quite a while.
It has.
Yeah. Now let's get started, and I want to start on the basis of this heightened discontent, this heightened unhappiness amongst consumers. When you enter the social media space, it's all agog with it. If people are not tagging telecoms companies, they're tagging banks, they're tagging different service delivery companies on their dissatisfaction around service delivery. Why do you think that we've seen an increased customer dissatisfaction within the Nigerian space?
Well, so there's both the good and the bad for that. From a regulatory standpoint, whether it's the FCCPC or the other regulators, I don't think we're doing less with ensuring that customers are satisfied. And I actually think that the companies may be doing a little more by themselves also, but not enough, both on the regulatory side and the companies, the providers side. I don't think it's enough. There's still a long, long road ahead. But one key reason, the good side of that, is that people are becoming more sensitized. People are becoming less tolerant of mediocre services or products that they're dissatisfied with. And secondly, we're experiencing inflation, and it's typical that when people are spending more and are struggling to spend whatever they're spending, they become far more sensitive and they complain more. And so between all of that, we're having a lot more complaints and a significant quotient of dissatisfaction. And what that does, it actually underscores one of the most important things that we've repeatedly pursued in the FCCPC since I took on the role, and that is that there is no consumer protection authority globally that's going to be able to get on top of complaints and resolve them. It's wrong. As a matter of fact, the government should not be a first-level primary complaint resolution mechanism. Indeed, what that means is that you've made the FCCPC a multi-company customer service desk. And if that is what is happening, it means that the companies have outsourced some of their operations to the government, and the government is subsidizing their businesses, at least with respect to resolution of complaints. And so the real mechanism that would work is for each company to resolve complaints. And we must get there. The companies are foot dragging on setting up independent standalone complaint resolution mechanisms, but it's the only place to go. Even if you asked NCC to resolve telco disputes or dissatisfaction, just think about the sheer number of telecommunications companies NCC would have to deal with. If you had NCA do that, see the sheer number of airlines. But each airline, each telco, each disco can resolve what is really their business. So just imagine now when you say an FCCPC that resolves all.
Now, for most of these businesses or most of these entities which you've called out, many of them have customer service relations desk. Some of them have complaints desk. For the central bank, for example, I know there's a consumer protection department in the central bank. I also know that I think there's a quick toll-free line or so, or a phone number you can call and also complain. I know there are also some of them like that for other agencies. But why is it that for any consumer that is dissatisfied, the first port of call is you, they remember you, and they call on your own agency? Have you been able to interface with some of these agencies of government? And I know there's a Servicom, but have you been able to interface with these agencies of government to ask, why are your customer relationship desk not working?
Good.
Or why are these complaints, why are they getting to me first?
And so people just want solutions. It really doesn't matter to them where they get the solutions from. People would generally go to a place that's more accessible and more responsive. And so in the FCCPC, our channels for receiving feedback, whether it's satisfaction or dissatisfaction, are more robust than with the other regulators. And response time is also different. And so because of that, people would come there repeatedly. But you must understand also that in each of those regulators, consumer protection is not the core of their regulatory role. And so the amount of resource that they can dedicate. So imagine if a central bank dedicated a significant amount of its resources to resolving complaints against financial institutions. The more prudential issues which the central bank must focus on, which is monetary policy, liquidity ratios, and the health and safety of the banks and our deposits there, need to take the vast majority of their resources. And so you can't outright just simply think that these regulators are irresponsible simply because their consumer protection apparatus are not as robust as that of the FCCPC.
They're not, you said not largely irresponsible, but they are not being responsive, because part of it also should be service delivery, which if you're looking at this government agency, there's a Servicom there that is also responsible for efficient and effective service delivery to citizens.
True. And I think
I think you're giving them an easy pass.
But honestly, I think
because it's our tax money.
It is our tax money. You're absolutely correct. But I think, like I said, the model that would work is not a regulator, whether the FCCPC or any other regulator, trying to get an A+ in resolving complaints. It would never work. I mean, just think about it. 210 million people in Nigeria. I mean, look at the sheer number of complaints that will come with respect to banks on a daily basis. What apparatus would a central bank have that would be able to address all those complaints? Now, if you took each of the banks and they had their own standalone complaint resolution mechanism, if the customers of each bank go to that bank, and it's only when things don't resolve there that it's escalated to a regulator, we'd have a far better system. So at the end of the day, what I would think that the regulators can succeed at most is not scaling up their response capabilities, but enforcing, with respect to their licensees, the requirement, the mandatory requirement to have a standalone complaint resolution mechanism. And you made a right point saying that many of them have customer service and feedback desk, but hardly any has a single, easily accessible, simple complaint resolution. They simply do not dedicate resources to complaint resolution.
Why is it like that, really? Because I also find out that the culture you have in the country, let me put it that way, it's like if you want an efficient service, or if you want an effective service delivery, or you just want to go buy something, and you see that there's something even wrong with it, or I'm not being attended to well, and I ask for the most little, people would think I'm asking for too much, that, oh, she too do, or you too do. Why not just take it like that? So do you think that this culture of mediocrity that is gradually creeping into our system is also affecting the way service is being delivered in the country?
Absolutely, there's no question about that. For one, long years of military rule generally promotes that kind of sense of
Ask and don't complain.
Yeah, not even don't complain. You know, who are you complaining to? And then in the military system, everything you get is a favor. And so those years of military rule certainly created a problem. There's also the cultural manage it, and it's
it can't be perfect.
The disparity between the powerful and the people who are not powerful has created a level of despondence in people that they just feel that being oppressed is actually a factor of life. However, the companies owe an obligation not to fit into that culture. There's a commercial contract and a social pact, but they take the environment as you find it. And I've said to a number of these companies, especially the multinationals, look at how you resolve complaints with respect to your products in other countries. Why would you treat that differently here?
I was coming to that there's also an increasing way that foreign companies, as it were, treat Nigerian customers. Perhaps even in the aviation sector. For example, I don't know if it must have happened to you because you fly a lot. For some of us, when perhaps you're coming, let me say, for example, from America, you take either Germany or France. Immediately you get to Paris or you get to Frankfurt. The plane that will carry Nigerians from Germany to Abuja or Lagos will be different. And the way that they will even treat Nigerians, perhaps in Frankfurt or Paris, will also be different. So why is it that we're seeing foreigners or foreign companies not treating Nigerians or not giving us efficient service delivery. And let me also bring in this part. I know that there was it a Chinese restaurant at the time in Lagos that was sanctioned? I would like to know what the update is on that to buttress what I've just said.
Good. Well, with respect to international airlines, there's a fleet management process. And so they allocate the aircraft on the routes based on many, many things. Capacity, distance, and all kinds of other things. And there is the perception that the Nigerian routes are poorly treated compared
Is it a perception and reality?
Well, the reason why I can't call it a...
So I've been there, right. And the few times I've been there, I will complain.
And absolutely, but
so it's not a perception, it's my reality.
The point I'm making is that people would complain on the London to New York route also. And in reality, I have been on international flights that had multiple segments, where I thought the aircraft from Nigeria was actually superior to the aircraft that continued on my onward journey. Now, that is not to eliminate or discredit the point you make. But this is why
or they will send you a text of, let's say, your flight has been delayed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
But one thing is clear.
Yes.
One thing is clear. The rules with respect to managing disruptions and dissatisfaction globally are different from the rules with managing them in Nigeria, even as an internal policy for the airlines. And many times we've engaged on that. And for instance, some of the European airlines have said that there's an European standard. The EU has made certain laws, and we have to also make those laws. And we're engaging the NCA on a daily basis that we've got to come to the place where others are. We have to have applicable standards that impose similar responsibilities or penalties where applicable on businesses when they violate rights in Nigeria. I mean, I'll be the first to say to you that, for one thing, I think ground service handling for the airlines, international airlines in Nigeria, is poor. If you have a missing bag and all of that, all you have to deal with most times is a ground service handler. In Nigeria, you hardly have a proper airline personnel that can take care of things when you land, regardless of what time of the day you land. Now, that doesn't happen in most of the countries. It doesn't matter, and interestingly, flights land in Nigeria much earlier than they land in most other countries. If you're traveling to the Middle East, most of the time, flights are landing in the wee hours of the morning, and they still have personnel on ground. And so together with sector regulators and the FCCPC, we really just must raise the standards, and not just raising the standards, we must enforce a consequence management system that attributes consequences to failure to comply with the standards.
How about the Chinese restaurant that I asked earlier?
Oh, they're closed. And what it was that that's one of the more outrageous things that I've experienced in the job, where a business in Nigeria can exclude patronage from Nigerians and say that only certain people of certain descent can patronize the place. That's absolutely, that for us, that was a no-brainer. There was no discussion about that. And I went there myself. I tried to get service, and service was declined to me as part of, we had sent some of our operatives in undercover capacity. It happened to them. I went, it happened to me, and so we simply closed the place.
Okay. Now, amongst these various sectors, the telecoms, power, banking, digital, loan, online money lenders, and some other sectors, which of the sector do you get most customers dissatisfied?
Power by far.
Power?
By far.
Okay. So how are you engaging with the discos?
On a daily basis. But again, our engagement strategy shows that it's never going to fix the problem. There is no day that we're not in touch with one disco or the other. The main ones being Abuja, Eko, Ikeja, Ibadan, Port Harcourt, I think Yola, Kaduna, some of the other ones are in the fringes. But what it shows is that the entire structure of the service delivery is faulty, because if you're resolving hundreds of complaints on a daily basis, and those complaints do resolve, yet you're still getting thousands and thousands more. It's not a failure of the complaint resolution system. It's a failure of the delivery system that makes that many complaints the case. One thing that is absolutely going to diminish complaints in power is estimated billing. The more people pay for exactly what they use, the less they will complain about what you're billing them. And so until we crack that estimated billing nut, I think we'll continue to experience significant problem in electricity distribution.
Now, before I go to other sectors, you said power is number one. Before I go to other sectors, has the social media made your job a bit easier? Or has it made that the searchlight is now a bit wider? Because I see that even your organization is heavy on social media, even you yourself, you know. And I should also say, I don't know why I'm talking about central bank today so much, because I also look at some of those things that have been happening. If a customer is dissatisfied with a bank, and they've been trying to even reach the bank, but all efforts have been have proved abortive, immediately they tag CBN. You will see that the bank, the handler of the bank's, whether Twitter handle or whatever, would respond. Same with you. So has the social media made your job a bit easier? Or it has democratized information?
Exactly. It's a bit of both, in the sense that one of the first things I did was to say, look, the social media is an important platform for engaging, and as such, we must create channels using social media for people to provide feedback, complain, and we resolve as many of them as we can. But in as much as that has created that channel for feedback and for people to complain, it has also brought you to the spotlight. And like you said, I thank you for your charitable words about our work there. But by the same token, it's also the platform for people to feel that you're not doing much, because there's a lot. For instance, the sheer number of people who say FCCPC isn't doing anything. And you ask why? I say, well, I tagged you. I tagged you on a complaint, I haven't received a response. Well, I get tagged on what? Hundreds, maybe thousands in any one day. And it's not even the most efficient allocation of resources for me to respond to every tag. There are people who are complaining to us directly, specifically, either on a platform or other mechanisms. And so when you tag me, for instance, you tag the central bank, you tag me, you tag the bank, it's not very efficient for me to jump onto that, because central bank might jump onto it also, the bank might jump onto it also. And so when the feedback is that, oh, I tagged you 3 days ago, you didn't even respond, then, in reality, it's not a failure of responsiveness, it's just simply an allocation of resource thing. And so while the social media presents an important and valuable platform for feedback and resolution, it is also the platform for people to criticize and even sometimes even feel that we're not doing enough. But you take the good with the bad.
Okay, let's talk about this loan sharks and the online money lenders. Just a few days ago, I don't know if that's when you said it, but that's also when the news came out that FCCP has warned the loan sharks that they will permanently get deleted from Google Play Store. I would want you to speak on that. And I would also want you to answer if it is ethical to contact the contact of debtors. Was it last week or about 2 weeks ago? I was constantly getting calls from people I did not know. I'll like pick, hello, do you know such a person? I'll like, the first time it happened to me, I was like, okay, please tell the person that is on. I was like, what exactly is this? I just had to put off the phone. Then the next time again, another person called me, but I found out, I had a system to find out which number calls me. And I got there, when I went to find out, I found out that it was a scammer that was calling me. So is it ethical to contact debtors' contact list? Or yes?
So I'll start with your last question first.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unethical. There's a privity of contract, and there's some level of confidentiality in mutual contractual understanding. There are limited circumstances where that mutual contractual understanding can become public, but certainly not in the manner that the digital lenders have done that. It's even a violation of privacy for you to have access to people's contact list on their telephones. And the excuse that they consented to it doesn't make any difference. People cannot consent to waive a statutory requirement. If the law says that this is a violation of law, people cannot waive that requirement of law by consent. For one, take for instance your information, somebody called you because they got their number from somebody else, maybe somebody who borrowed money from them. Now, that person who borrowed money they might have a reasonable basis to engage that person one way or the other, but your telephone number and your personal details are your proprietary information. And you exercised your prerogative to give it to whoever this person was. You didn't, by that exercise of your prerogative or discretion, authorize the release to some digital lender or not. You didn't. And so even if there was a reasonable or rational explanation for why they should be able to get the information about the borrower, there's no reasonable or rational explanation for why they should have the information about a third party. And so one of the things we've enforced is that the applications, the technology cannot even seek to download contacts, photos, and other personal information about a borrower. And that has been the case. And we did quite some work on this, like you said in the intro. And it had become a very big problem in 2020 and 2021, in part because of COVID. And it got into alarming levels before we set up the joint task force. And we spent a lot of time last year doing a lot of work addressing this, and we succeeded. Things went down significantly. We got Google, and Google became a partner, and so they couldn't go on Play Store without our approval anymore. And
so for any loan shark or any digital online lender now, they must have an approval for you
from them to be on Play
Google
Store.
Google
For
Play
them
Store.
to be on Play Store. But
if they are not on Play Store?
Yes, and that's the problem. That's the point I was about to make. But what we're seeing now is that in the past few months, weeks, there's been calm and increasing return to the defamations and all of that. And that is because they are now using APKs and other methods. And the World Wide Web is just such a massive place. So tracking is so difficult. If it's so long as it's not some central location that is managed or a platform that is owned by a business like Google or other service provider where you can literally go to that person and use regulatory powers to prevent. And we've done all kinds of things. We've reached out to banks, we've payment systems, Florida will pay, and make sure you cannot provide service processing or termination to these guys without our approval. But now we're beginning to see the return of this, and we're thinking through at the same time trying to make sure. The one thing that seems to also be the case is that there might have been some limited violations by some who also are back on Google. And what we're also seeing is that some who are on Google are now going to set up alternative apps using APKs. And that's why we made the point that if you're listed with us or on Google, if you do this just once, there will not be a second chance. We will take you down permanently. It won't matter that you go fix your systems. It won't matter that you go fix your processes. It won't matter that you discipline whoever that operative is. We think we've given enough time for people to know that you cannot do business this way.
So for those that would have been on Google and they flout your rule and you permanently delist them from Google Play Store, they will still be operating in business.
So
what happens to them then?
There will be an illegal business.
Then there will be an illegal business.
There will be an illegal business because we have blacklisted that business.
Why would you say there will be an illegal business? Because their name perhaps will still be in CSC.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you're a registered business or not. If you're operating your business in violation of a regulatory determination, you're still doing business illegally.
Okay, for my case, for example, I found out with that call that I was making, I had to reach out to the person that they called me on his behalf. Apparently, that person cannot even go to the loan app and borrow money, as it were. And the person told me that, no, I never borrowed, I don't know who these people are. So I found out that they were scammers. Have you also been seeing an upsurge of that?
And so with respect to scams, those are law enforcement issues, not regulatory issues. A scammer is a criminal, period. It's not a service provider, it's not producing anything, it's not selling anything. All the scammer is doing is literally extorting, which is a crime. And so with that, when those come to us, even though it's not our core, and that's why I said on the Joint Regulatory and Enforcement Task Force, we've got the EFCC and the ICPC also. That's a financial crime. And so we refer that to the appropriate law enforcement agency.
Okay. Still with that position or any other position, if, for example, for people that have been called over people that asked loan sharks for money and they've not gotten back to them, is there a complaint mechanism system where someone like me, for example, can go and say, I had calls from social online money lenders, I'm not happy, why should they be calling me? Is there a complaint system?
So there are two-pronged, we have a two-pronged approach to that. We have a dedicated platform, Lenders Task Force at fccpce.gov.ng. That's to provide us feedback. And so if you said to us, for instance, I got this call and this is with respect to this person and it's this particular app or company that sent the call, that helps us to harvest to know who's doing what or who's doing wrong, since you're not the subject of the lending activity itself. Now, we also have a complaint resolution platform on our website, or you can download the app to complain to us. So for instance, if you were a borrower and this has happened to you, you can file a complaint. And so for those who are just seeking to provide feedback, we encourage them to use the Lenders Task Force email address so that we gather that information. And whether we're responding to that or not, it's feedback. And we're using it to engage. We're using it to proceed in our investigations and our regulatory interventions.
What, for example, have you been able to get, especially when you engage with these online money lenders, regarding, because if you go to an online money lender to borrow money, you are also supposed to pay back what you borrow. So in as much as we're saying, oh, that they are harassing you, they are slandering your name and all of that, you were bound by perhaps a regulation. For some people, they don't even read quickly. You just borrow 10,000, you know. What have they been able to tell you during engagements with them? Because people are used to, they borrow money and they don't pay back. They'll say, after all, Nigeria owe money, Nigeria is owing, so don't put me under pressure.
And what we've found is that they say exactly what you've said, that the only way to make people responsible is for them to be under this type of pressure and the retribution of public shaming and disgrace. And my sense of that is that I'm not even sure whether that's a proven a theory for recovering, because many of them, most of the defaulters are chronic. They're borrowing from multiple apps. And I personally and the agency, we welcome the strictest possible enforcement of the right of legitimate digital lenders. You borrow, you must pay. If you have to lose certain privileges because you don't pay, so be it. But the solution will not be violating the law. The solution will not be violating people's privacy. The solution will not be defaming people and telling lies. The solution can't certainly be saying that someone has a mental problem or has contracted HIV, even if that were true. Someone's medical condition or status is a private issue. Or certainly, like the example you gave, you're a third party who gets dragged into the situation. So the solution can't be that. You can't look for the easy way out. I understand the cultural problems. We will work with lenders if they want to engage us to set up a system. And globally, that's what they've done. Unsecured lending is one of the fastest ways of promoting commerce. But unsecured lending is risky lending. And that risk is characterized by what? Higher interest rates and other, a history. And so they must be able to use, as a credit bureau, escalate that. We have BVNs, you have telephone numbers. There must be a way for you to check whether people are credit worthy or not. It is so bad that sometimes you cannot even get credit, not because you've been irresponsible, but because you do not have a credit history. If you don't have a credit history, you have not given us any reason to issue you credit. And credit history isn't about a mortgage or anything. It's about the small borrowings. Sometimes you can even start with a secured loan, a secured credit card. Right? So they must do the work that it takes to protect the integrity of their recovery system. Certainly not these abusive or oppressive methods.
How many loan apps have you licensed now? Because I know that there was a time, whether it was last year or early this year, if I'm not mistaken, where you said about 173
yes.
applications. So would you give me a figure? Has it reduced?
Yes, we're still at 173 because we closed,
okay.
But we've recommenced. And so I think we had come up to 180. I don't have the last figure. And it's a matter of concern in the sense that why do we have this many loan apps? But I can tell you that people are using them. It's such an important thing. You have no idea how many people are excluded and how many people get into dire straits or despondence in the absence of being able to borrow 5,000 naira for medication, for formula for their children, for hospital treatment for parents. And so you have that dilemma. And there is a huge movement of ban all loan apps, get them out of the country. And I say that, I understand that, it makes sense, but if you stand, it's from the lenses you're looking through, if you stand where I stand and see exactly what piece they plug in the value chain, you might change your opinion about whether they should all be banned and not do business.
And they've also helped for financial inclusion.
Yes.
Just like I said at the beginning of the program, but things just have to be regulated and moving forward. Is there a checklist as to if an online money lender wants to get an application? Can you just give me 1 or 2, 3, 4 things? Do they need to pay? What are the documents, perhaps? Just 2, 3, 4?
Good. So the limited and interim regulations also creates the guidelines and the form to that, and we've done it free, because the one thing that we wanted to be clear is that this isn't some revenue generator, and we spend a lot of time in it. And as a regulator, you're supposed to at least be reimbursed the cost of the time. But we've insisted that let this be done free, so that we don't add that cost to the cost of borrowing. And it would require information about who you are, where you are, who the directors are, the source of the money, and requires for you to submit certain documents, proof that you've complied with the data protection regulations and applicable sundry laws to show that your system and the integrity of your system is safe and people can hack into it and take people's information. Your technology must be tested to be sure that it complies and it doesn't have the ability to download people's contact or other personal information, and the source of your money, because you want to make sure that it's not it's not a platform for laundering money or moving money for terrorism and those other things. And so for the things that don't concern us, for instance, if there's something suspicious about the source of money, we'll send that to the NFIU, the EFCC, or the central bank. And so you also have to show us your complaint resolution policy and the fact that you have a process for making sure you resolve complaints, and your loan calculation process to make sure that you're not compounding loans.
Just this morning, before I came into the studio, I don't know if you also saw the news, there's a consumers tribunal. But people don't also know so much about it. I think they got CCPT also. And I saw this morning that Stanbic IBTC Bank has been fined 120 million naira for failure to disburse, I think, a reversal just this morning. What would you say about the consumer tribunal and perhaps this piece of news? I don't know if you got to see that.
Yes, I have. I've read it.
Okay.
And so to address the question of why people may not be that acutely aware of the Competition and Consumer Protection Tribunal, the reason is that the vast majority, for the most part, the jurisdiction of the tribunal is it has, for the most part, has appellate jurisdiction over the decisions of the FCCPC or other sector regulators when they make decisions with respect to consumer protection or competition. So it doesn't have original jurisdiction in everything. And so maybe that's why people are not that familiar with it. But I mean, I think that's a very interesting approach. I read the judgment as it is. I read the sections of the FCCPA that it's attributed to. And I think that the role of the tribunal is very important. It's a check and balance over the decisions of the commission, and in the areas and the limited areas where there's original jurisdiction, it's a check and balance over other regulators and even businesses also. Again, like I said, consequence is the greatest modifier of human behavior. If there's an attributable consequence, going forward, it'll be interesting to see how things go, because when you talk about a judicial process, which in some sense that's what a tribunal does, we expect challenges as we go on, and those are the things that strengthen the jurisprudence and strengthen the institutions.
For example, would you like to follow that story to know if Stanbic IBTC would really pay that person?
Oh, absolutely, we'll be
Or
following.
is there also a process whereby Stanbic IBTC can appeal?
Yeah, Stanbic IBTC can appeal, and that's what I meant by whether they appeal or they comply. We'll be following that very keenly, because whichever way it goes, it strengthens the jurisprudence and the institutions.
Let's take the next few minutes that we have, about 2 minutes to go. It's so, we've talked for how many minutes now? Close to 30 minutes, and it's as if we've not scratched the surface. Let's talk about the aviation sector. In Nigeria, there seems to be so much around delays, about service delivery. I think I read a report recently, either by the NCAA, if I'm not mistaken, as to
percentile of delays.
Percentile, yes. What would you like to say about that?
I think what I would like to say is that we've had enough of pussyfooting. We've had enough of just trying to engage, because these conversations have been going on forever. And the airlines have their problems, they have the infrastructure deficit, all kinds of issues that contribute to all of this. And I understand that. But there is no explanation for the sheer level of recklessness. 2 days ago, I was billed to travel to Bauchi at 2:30 p.m. They moved the flight to 9 a.m. I had commitments in the morning that I couldn't avoid. And so because I had commitments in Bauchi, I now had to leave Abuja about 12 or 1 and drive to Bauchi. And driving back, I had to drive back to Abuja and arrived at Abuja about 1 a.m. yesterday morning. And the stories are endless. We need to hold these airlines more responsible. And it's not by sitting in the same room as we've done repeatedly. One of the things, and what MC has done is an incredible first step in what we've always advocated, is put the data out. Let people know what the options are.
Okay.
Before you approve their schedules, let's see their fleet, let's see if they can truly operate the schedules they want to sell. And let's put display boards at the airports and show which airline left, how much they left on time and arrived on time, and people can make their choices.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that for now. Just like I said, we don't have, anyway, perhaps on another
Absolutely.
interview we'll look at it. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Babatunde Irukera, who is the Executive Vice Chairman and the Chief Executive Officer of Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the FCCPC. Thank you very much for being a part of our show today. And indeed, this week, please join me again next week, Monday morning, bright and early. Of course, Monday to Fridays, we're in your faces. Be the best you can be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Naji. Bye now.